So moving on to another question. When, if ever, did you attend your first sleepover with someone from a different race? If so, what was that experience like? And we'll start with in Mosley this time.
I would say it was when I started running track in high school. Every weekend we would travel, or most weekends we would travel. And so that was probably the first time that I spent the night with a person of a different race. And it's just crazy because, as Abby was saying, like, Homewood is very diverse, but races didn't intermingle for some reason. And so like my first experience with that was not until I was 15 or 16 years old, which is crazy to be living in a community where both races are present, all races are present. So yeah, just in high school was the first time.
For me, so one of my best friends, like, goes all the way back until we were 4 years old. So I mean, I've been having he was white. So I mean, I've had sleepovers with, different races since I was young. And for me, being young, my mom never, doesn't teach hate. So for me, it was no different. Everything was normal. It was just a regular time. We would have fun. Now, as I got older and more into high school, I think that's when I started not to kind of go towards sleepovers. And that's kind of when my experiences changed a little bit. So as we got older in high school, I always expected us to just have fun, play the video game, go outside and play. But somehow, when you're at sleepovers, discussions happen. Usually, girls will talk about boys, boys will talk about girls at the school, yada, yada. But somehow I always found myself in the middle of a conversation about race, and usually not on the positive side of race. And then somehow I ended up being the spokesperson, or they would try to push a certain idea, or make me agree to, like, in a way, make me agree with whatever they believed. And I think that really kind of pushed me away towards sleepovers. But definitely in the beginning, I didn't really notice anything because I was so young. But as I got older, I definitely started to realize that every conversation was something about race or some type of racist joke. And I really hate that I didn't say anything back then, but I was outnumbered. So I didn't want to be the one that's always angry, or the one that always has to say something, or be the one with the different opinion. So that's kind of my experience.
Mine was in 5th grade, and I remember it was on a school night, and it was fine. We had fun and ate and hung out. And then I remember the next day at school, we had several sleepovers, but every time, like the next week at school, it was like a huge deal. And it was still talked about in high school.
My first time being at a sleepover with other races was Stephen at camp. The overall experience was good. Everybody mixed together. We had fun. But you can still see how races were separated and we slept together.
When I was younger, I was always the girl that wanted to go to bed at like 8:30 or 9 and didn't really do the sleepovers very much. But I would say that going into high school was when we would go and travel over the summer for cheer competitions, was when I really first did sleepovers with people of other races. But in middle school, I do remember doing like spend the nights, like as a group with white girls, black girls, and Asian girls. But really majority of it was, I never went to someone of another race's house to spend the night. And that's something I've wanted to talk to my parents about too, just like asking like what their internal bias potentially was with that, or if they ever really thought about it. But yeah, I would say high school was the first time.
No, I haven't had a sleepover with one of the other race, but other than camp. And then I still realize that people, they have their own way of sleeping and interests of how they sleep. I mean, but it's still interesting how even at camp, it still was kind of divided racially. But in that matter, so.
So what is your earliest memory of microaggression, if you've had one? So microaggression is a term used for brief and commonplace daily verbal, behavioral, or environmental indignities, whether intentional or unintentional, that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative prejudice, slights, and insults towards any group, particularly culturally marginalized groups. So this necessarily doesn't have to be done to you, but you noticed it, that it was like done to someone else. So Hakeem, we'll start with you.
So as a child, I heard most of my elders, I guess this is growing up in any Black family, you'll hear your elders say something derogatory towards another race due to something they have done. Just something, it had to be so out of the ordinary they have done, and they'll just say something like, I'm not gonna say it, but like something out of the ordinary that's not as pleasing to hear towards another race.
So this is a hard question. And this is the one that I sat on for a really long time. Because for a lot of my life, when I would get together with extended family over Christmas and Thanksgiving, comments were always made about like Black people and just about how, like, just something in their day, like, oh, you know, I was at this restaurant and the Black person over there was doing this. And I would be like, why is there the need to whisper? Why are you talking about Black people like with that tone and in that way? It was just something that happened. It was never something that I understood why they were doing until now. And when that happens now, my whole family knows that I'm going to say something. And with the extended family, it is hard. And I really had a hard time like acknowledging that people in my family can be that way. But I would say that I never really acknowledged the microaggressions when I was young at family gatherings. But I would say that as I got into high school and especially in college, it's something that I acknowledged. And at Auburn, I was a social work major, and microaggressions are something that we talked about literally every single semester, and it's something that we were tested on and we learned a lot more about. And so it's something that like on a day-to-day I acknowledge like in my surroundings and in my environment. And so I wish that I had really learned a lot more about that when I was in middle school and high school. Maybe that's something that I wish they had taught more in the curriculum in K through 12 because it's super important, and I think it's something that we do need to learn about so that we can talk to our families about it and talk to our friends about it that do make those comments, even if they don't understand what they're saying. I think that's especially when we really need to understand what a microaggression is. So
I'll say I was also young as well. When my first experience with microaggression, a lot of my people I looked up to, like I guess like my family members, even friends, say like bad jokes about white people, and I was kind of ignorant to it because I was young. But as I grew older, like I definitely speak up more, I teach more now.
A lot of things like Abby, especially with extended family gatherings. The one I thought of the most that it's not the first one, but the one that I hear a lot and is the most prevalent is I don't see color. And you have to say, well, that's a problem that you don't see color, because there's so much wrong with that statement in itself. So I think that one pops up the most.
Microaggressions for me goes back to, and I know you probably like you beating a dead horse, but I promise you this is one that slides under the carpet so much, and that's the colorism, like I was mentioning before. So someone saying you're pretty for a Black girl or you're smart for a Black person. I heard that one a lot because oftentimes I was the only Black kid in my classes. This one may be a macro, I don't even know if that's a thing, a macroaggression, but I feel like this was one that I used to hear so much. And excuse me, I was about to get kind of, whatever, but the one that I remember the most used to irk my soul was people would tell me that there was a difference between a nigger and a black person. And they try to use it in a way of a compliment towards me and be like, you're not a nigger, you're a black person, because of, in their reference, the N-word in that case would be a thug or someone that sags their pants, and or like essentially taking anything of black culture and making it into that, and labeling them as that derogatory term. And then from parents, I think a lot of times, like I mentioned before, me and my mom kind of moved up and we went to Prattville, Alabama, and that's a majority white city. So a lot of the parents that I came, into contact with, they kind of treated me as like a golden child in a way, because I was educated, I carried myself well, but the way that they would go about maybe complimenting or trying to, tell me that they like me, was by putting other black people down. And, when I was younger, I don't think I necessarily understood that, but like looking back on it now, I definitely catch it and I definitely correct it way more. And then the last microaggression that I have is when people say you talk black. I mean, yeah, you talk black, or you act black, or you act white, or you talk white. That's the biggest one as well for me.
There aren't like specific microaggressions that I remember experiencing when I was little, although I'm sure that they happened and continue to happen. I remember in high school, there was, y'all probably heard about this because this organization has recently been canceled, but it's the Birmingham Bells. And basically it's supposed to be Panhellenic, or like they're supposed to do community outreach, but basically it's these girls who are selected to come wear antebellum dresses and take pictures on a plantation and get presented to your community, and do community service, and you're invited to do it. And so although like blatantly it wasn't discriminatory, there were never any people of color in part of that organization. And that was like, there were no people of color. And so if you continue to run an organization that completely disregards an entire part of your community, what message does that send? Like what does that tell every person of color in your community if you're intentionally excluding them? So there was just a lot of systems like that I remember not taking note of in high school, but looking back on it, it's like, how can this go on? Like, how can you still stand for this? And I pray and I hope that there is more awareness being brought to it, because like I said, the Birmingham Bells is no longer a thing. But microaggressions on a larger scale can affect entire countries, because you can see the rhetoric of some people in power in our country, referring to looters as thugs, and referring to protesters as thugs, and like not addressing the problems in the movement that's happened because of George Floyd's death. That's a macroaggression, like Jordan was saying, like that. We can't stand for that kind of thing anymore, because it's just going to continue to manifest hate in our country, and we cannot have that happen anymore.
So what books or articles have you read, or maybe even movies that you've watched, that taught you something new about racial indifference that you would recommend to those watching? So, and Mosley, I'll start with you.
The most recent one is The 13th. If y'all haven't heard about that, it's a documentary about mass incarceration on Netflix. Some of the Sorryville interns actually watched it last night on a Netflix watch party, but it just basically breaks down the problems that come with mass incarceration. Like I was saying, how that stays with you for the rest of your life, how in some states you're not able to vote for so long after that. It just really strips away your rights as a person. And like, it is one in four Black men now are expected to go to prison at some point in their lifetime. And that system just takes away the leaders from your community and can just ultimately destroy communities if this system is not taken down a notch, and if we don't continue to fight towards it.
Abby, I'm sorry, but I'm about to take yours probably, but it's actually a book that she just gave me not too long ago to read, and it's Just Mercy. Learned about it at EJI and kind of person to person through Sorryville. And that was the first time I think I'd ever heard about mass incarceration, kind of like Ann Mosley said, and pretty much how slavery has just evolved. So very great book, highly recommended.
Slavery by Another Name is a great one. And The Hate You Give is not, it's like a young adult novel through the eyes of a young woman whose friend was shot. And that's a good one as well.
The first two I've seen from person to person was Reconstruction to America and Slavery to Mass Incarceration. And those are the first two that I've seen, but I have to do more, but those are on two.
Let's see. Okay, so I've been reading a lot over quarantine. And a lot of what everyone has said is are some books that I've read, but currently I'm reading through Me and White Supremacy, and I encourage all white people to read it. It's very convicting, and it's taking me a long time because I'm trying to be thorough about it, but it's a book that you work through, like you journal and you also read at the same time, because you answer questions about like your personal biases. And then I'm also reading the new Jim Crow, and it's just filled with a lot of information, so it's taking me a little longer as well because I'm highlighting and also trying to take it all in. But then The Sun Does Shine is a book that Bree actually told me about, and I read it, and it was really it was good to read because Just Mercy talks about Anthony Ray Hinton's story a little bit, but he mostly focuses on Walter McMillan's case. But The Sun Does Shine talks about Anthony Ray Hinton, and it was just an incredible book. So those are some books that I have read.
So I have two books. One is Just Mercy, and I think Bree introduced me, and she actually let me borrow her book. I haven't gave it back yet, so it's such a good book. Also, it's a book I read in middle school called Monster. I don't know if you heard about it. I just remember it. Something happening at a store, and then it just went downhill from there. And that just showed me how your skin color can be very eye-opening at a young age through even a book such as Monster. So.
And our last question, so I just kind of wanted to like get your opinions. I think this is a very broad question, but also just like really wanted to, just like a personal question. So I wanted to like share like with those who are watching. And so I really wanted to ask y'all just like, where do we go from here? Like we've seen, you know, like George Floyd and the killing of him and like just so many different individuals. And even just like seeing like where we're in our country right now with leaders, in our own cities. I think we're seeing lots of unrest, which I think is really good. So like, where do we go from here? How do we, like as a group of people, and then how do you make this moment a movement? So Hakeem.
So first off, I think what we're doing right now is a start, because we're starting somewhere. I also think that it's better to start in smaller communities so that we can start smaller and then move forward to bigger communities. You get a group, a small crowd, then you'll be able to advance and influence more and more people each day. Also think it just takes more talks, more, uncomfortable talks to have, throughout your community to build those relationships and build those understandings, from different people's walks of life.
So I have a lot of things that I've been thinking about, but mostly during this time, I've really been trying to listen. And I think that's really important for all white people currently, to just shut their mouth and listen to what they can do to change. And while doing that, also be reading articles and reading the news, reading books that are going to educate you on how you can change your internal bias, and having the tough conversations. I know that I've reached out to some of my Black friends who I know me well, and I know them well, and I have been like, please honestly tell me like how I can change and like what I can do And that's not going to happen. Like, that's a big question to ask. So over time, like, I know that in the friendships I have, a lot of that will play out, and we'll have more and more conversations about it. But I think really having conversation and then acting on those conversations is the most important thing that we can be doing. And then in November, voting is going to be one of the biggest things in the whole world. And I think also just acknowledging that voter suppression is still a thing, and that we need to work to change how not diverse the ballots are, and give more people an opportunity to have a voice about voting, because I think that there's a lot still that we need to work on with that. So yeah, there's a lot of things that I think we can do.
I think we need to educate ourselves more. Also have those talks of people of other races. Just going forward, I think protesting is doing good. Also voting. Just overall educating yourself doesn't matter.
I think that humans have become really good at dehumanizing each other. So I think a lot of groundwork in listening for white people and lifting our people of color and Black people up right now in this movement. I think that a lot of policy work is coming, hopefully, and educating ourselves.
Ooh, I love this question. I'm not gonna go on too long, but I do have a couple of bullet points. From here, be wary. The internet is not your friend at all times. We've mentioned a lot about educating yourself. Absolutely. Educate yourself on the past, because they always say that the past will repeat itself, but you can definitely stop that. So yeah, if you go on Twitter and get your information from there, that's probably not the most credible source. So I would stay away from there, because people are usually loud and wrong in their opinion. So definitely be wary of that. The next one is, it's okay to be wrong. And that's for white, Black, Asian, anybody. It is okay to be wrong. If you don't know something and you're in a conversation, don't be afraid to say that, because where that sets up is a conversation for you to understand a different perspective. So even if you're wrong, it's okay to be wrong. Say it anyways. Obviously, don't be ill-intentioned or harmful with it, but it's okay to be wrong. Vote, not just in your presidential election. I watched a video the other day. It was on TikTok. I know I just said Twitter's not a credible source, but TikTok, there was a guy who was talking, and most people just vote in the presidential election, and the presidents don't make laws. It's your congressman. So make sure you're in contact with your congressman. Make sure you're voting at your local level, your state level, the national level. Don't just vote in November. Vote in the next 2 years after the presidential election to get those congressmen in to help the president. The last one is love, and I feel like this is the hardest one, and sometimes it is for me. But even when people don't want to listen to what you're saying, and some people may never change, some people may not want to change, and that's going to be okay. But the biggest thing that we can do, especially as Christians or even a part of the church, regardless of your denomination, I feel like it's all based in love and what you learn from God. So even the people who don't want to change, you have to love them, because at the moment that you hate them, you're a part of the problem at that point. So you don't have to like them, but you definitely need to love them. So that would be my advice.
Well, all of these smart and beautiful people have really covered the bases a lot, but I'm just gonna preach what everyone has said. Just listen with an open heart, like truly listen and actively listen, and realize that you don't have to be afraid to say the wrong thing, because sometimes your silence could be more harmful than what you could say. You have to be an ally to these people, and you have to be an ally to your community and your country. And I think we need to start educating at a younger age. We need to start making race a part of the conversation in elementary school, not tying a bow on the civil rights movement making sure people understand that this is an ongoing problem, calling people out on their microaggressions, because, you know, some people just aren't aware at all. They might not intend to be hurtful, but they just haven't been taught what is a hurtful dialect and hurtful rhetoric. And obviously what Jordan said, you have to love everyone. You know, as many problems as I have with some of the current administration, I pray for Trump, and I want him to do what's best for our country, and I want him to lead with justice and love. And so I can't hate him. So and also voting, because I remember in Michelle Obama's book, she talks about how it hurt her so badly that Barack didn't have the Congress that he needed to pass the laws that the people wanted. That's how change is going to happen, is in Congress and all the different branches. So just being aware and informed and loving every brother and sister that we have here.
Amen. I like that.
Y'all, that was really good. Thank y'all so much for sharing. Thank you so much for researching and like preparing for this, because I know that some of you may have been a little nervous or whatever, but like seriously, I think this is really going to make a change in our Starterville community, and I hope that within our community that other people are changed by the people that are in our community that's going to like listen to this and watch this. I think it was really good to hear like the different voices. And so, yeah, thank y'all so much for this. And so I am going to pray, and then we can end this out. So God of all humanity, you call us to bring about healing and wholeness for the whole world, for women and men of all races and cultures and creeds. Help us to respond to a world that is groaning under the weight of injustice and broken relationships. Remind us that differences are a gift and interdependence a strength from the same creative God. Strengthen us to resist the forces that encourage polarization and competition rather than understanding and cooperation. We know that your reign is not built on injustice and oppression, but on the transformation of hearts, new life, not just reordered life. Teach us forgiveness, O God. Bring us reconciliation. Give us hope for the future. We pray in Jesus' love. Amen.
Amen.
Thank y'all
Amen.
so much.
Thank you, Bree. You did an
That was
amazing
great.
job leading.
You did. Thank you.
You're welcome. That was so good, for real. Thank you.
I'm gonna let it shine.